Billerica Library's Book Buzz August publication. Contemporary fiction. The Death of VIVEK by AKWAEKE EMEZI. One afternoon in a town in southeastern Nigeria, a mother opens her front door to discover her son's body wrapped in colorful fabric at her feet. What follows is the heart-wrenching story of one's family's struggle to understand a child whose spirit is both gentle and mysterious. Raised by a distant father and an understanding but overprotective mother, VIVEK suffers disorienting blackouts, moments of disconnection between self and surroundings. As adolescence gives way to adulthood, VIVEK finds solace in friendship with the warm, boisterous daughters of the Niger wives, foreign-born women married to Nigerian men. But VIVEK's closest bond is with Osita, the worldly, high-spirited cousin whose teasing confidence masks a guarded private life. As their relationship deepens and Osita struggles to understand VIVEK's escalating crisis, the mystery gives way to a heart-stopping act of violence and a moment of exhilarating freedom. With or Without You by Caroline Leavitt. After almost 20 years together, Stella and Simon are starting to run into problems. An up-and-coming rock musician when they first met, Simon has been clinging to dreams of fame even as the possibility of it has grown dimmer. And now that his band might finally be on the brink again, he wants to go on the road, leaving Stella behind. But when she falls into a coma on the eve of his departure, he has to make a choice between stardom and his wife. And when she wakes a different person with an incredible artistic talent of her own, the two of them must examine what it is they really want. The Weekend by Charlotte Wood. Four older women have lifelong friendship of the best kind, loving, practical, frank, and steadfast. But when Sylvie dies, the ground shifts dangerously for the remaining three. Can they survive together without her? They are Jude, Wendy, and Adele. Struggling to recall exactly why they remained close all these years, the grieving women gather for Christmas at Sylvie's old beach house. Not for festivities, but to clean the place out before it's sold. Without Sylvie to maintain the group's delicate equilibrium, frustrations build and painful memories press in. Fraying tempers and an elderly dog, unwelcome guests, and way too much wine collide in a storm that brings long buried hurts to the surface and threatens to sweep away their friendship for good. Grown Ups by Emma Jane Unsworth. Jenny McLean's life is falling apart. Her friendships are flagging. Her body has failed her. She just lost her column at the FOOF because she isn't the fierce voice that they need. Her ex has gotten together with another woman. And worst of all, Jenny's mother is about to move in. Having left home at 18 to remake herself as a self-sufficient millennium, Jenny is now in her 30s and nothing is as she thought it would be, least of all adulthood. But despite our impossible expectations of women, Emma Jane Unsworth never lets Jenny off the hook. Jenny's life is falling apart at her own hands, and whether or not she has help from her mother or her friends, Jenny is the only one who will be able to pick up the pieces and learn how to more or less grow up. Or will she? Moss by Claus Modick. An aging botanist withdraws to the seclusion of his family vacation home in the German countryside. In his final days, he realizes that his life's work of scientific classification has led him astray from the hidden secrets of the natural world. As his body slows and his mind expands, he recalls his family escape from budding fascism in Germany, his father's need to prune and control, and his tender moments with first love. His fascination with botany culminates in a profound understanding of life's meaning and his own mortality. All the Right Mistakes by Laura Jameson. 5 college friends have arrived at 40 in very different circumstances, but with at least one thing in common. They are among the more privileged in society. Elizabeth and Sarah are lawyers. Martha is a doctor. Carmen is a wealthy, well-educated homemaker, and Heather, the most successful, is a famous tech executive. After more than 2 decades of friendship, they know one another better than anyone. Then, Heather writes a woman's advice book detailing the key life mistakes of her four friends: opting out, ramping off, giving half effort, and forgetting your fertility. That becomes wildly popular. And Elizabeth, Sarah, Martha, and Carmen all feel the sting of Heather's cruel words. Despite their status, these women face everyday obstacles, including work problems, parenting challenges, infertility, racism, sexism, financial stress, and the marital woes. And as they weather their 40th year, each one can't help but wonder if their life might have been different if they had followed Heather's advice. But as these friends are continually reminded, life is complex, messy, disappointing, and joyful, often all at once. And no one can plan their way out of that reality. In the end, all five women must embrace the idea that their lives are shaped not just by their choices, but also how they handle the obstacles that life brings. More Than Just a Pretty Face by Suad Masood. Dan doesn't lack confidence. He may not be the smartest guy in the room, but he's funny, gorgeous, going to make a great chef one day. His father doesn't approve of his career choice, but that hardly matters. What does matter is the opinion of Dan's longtime crush, the perfect in all ways, Cavell, and her family, who consider him less than an ideal arranged marriage prospect. When Dan gets selected for Renaissance Man, a school-wide academic championship, it's the perfect opportunity to show everyone he's smarter than they think. He recruits the brilliant, totally uninterested in Bismarck to help with the competition. But the more time Dan spends with her, the more he learns from her, the more he cooks for her, the more he realizes that happiness may be staring him right in his pretty face. Our next genre, fantasy. Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angles. In a city covered in ice and ruin, a group of magicians face off in a daring game of magical feats to find the next headliner of the conquering circus, only to find themselves under the threat of an unseen danger striking behind the scenes. As each act becomes more and more risky and the number of missing magicians piles up, three are forced to reckon with their secrets before the darkness comes for them next. The star, Kayla, a powerful showgirl out to prove she's the best no matter the cost. The master, Jack, the keeper of the club, and more than one lie told. The magician, DeMarco, the brooding judge with the dark past he can no longer hide. Vanessa Yu's Magical Paris Tea Shop by Roselle Lim. Ever since she can remember, Vanessa Yu has been able to see people's fortunes at the bottom of their teacups. To avoid blurting out their fortunes, she converts to coffee. But somehow, fortunes escape and find a way to complicate her life and the ones of those around her. To add to this plight, her romance life is so non existent that her parents enlist the services of a matchmaking expert from Shanghai. The day before her matchmaking appointment, Vanessa accidentally sees her own fate: death by traffic accident. She decides that she can't truly live until she can find a way to get rid of her uncanny abilities. When her eccentric aunt, Evelyn, shows up with a tempting offer to whisk her away, Vanessa says goodbye to America and bonjour to Paris. While working at Evelyn's tea stall at a Parisian antique market, Vanessa performs some matchmaking of her own, attempting to help reconnect her aunt with the lost love. As she learns more about herself and the root of her gifts, she realizes one thing to be true: knowing one's destiny isn't a curse, but being unable to change it is. Our third genre is suspense. True Story by Kate Reed Petty. A gifted and reclusive ghostwriter, Alice Leavitt makes a living helping other people tell their stories. But she is haunted by the one story she cannot tell. A story of, as she puts it, the things that happened while I was asleep. Back in 1999, Nick Brothers and his high school lacrosse team returned for their senior year in a well-to-do Baltimore suburb as the reigning state champs. The afterglow of their big win is bound to last until graduation. Not even the pressure of college applications can get in the way of their fun. But when a private schoolgirl attempts suicide in the wake of the team's legendary parties, and a rumor begins to circulate that two of Nick's teammates sexually assaulted her, it seems like it might ruin everything. Until the team circles the wagons, casts doubt on the story, and the town moves on. But not everyone does. 15 years later, four people, Alice, Nick, a documentary filmmaker, and a wealthy entrepreneur, remain haunted by the roles they played, the things they still don't understand, and how the story has shaped their lives. In sections told from different points of view, the layers of mystery are gradually peeled back as we barrel toward the truth of what really happened that night and what came after. The Night Swim by Megan Golden. After the first season of her true crime podcast became an overnight sensation and set an innocent man free, Rachel Crowell is now a household name and the last hope for thousands of people seeking justice. But she's used to being recognized for her voice, not her face, which makes it all more unsettling when she finds a note on her car windshield addressed to her, begging for help. The small town of Neapolis is being torn apart by a devastating rape trial. The town's golden boy, a swimmer destined for Olympic greatness, has been accused of raping a high school student, the beloved granddaughter of the police chief. Under pressure to make season 3 a success, Rachel throws herself into interviewing and investigating. But the mysterious letters keep showing up at unexpected places. Someone is following her, and she won't stop until Rachel finds out what happened to her sister 25 years ago. Officially, Jenny Stills tragically drowned, but the letters insist she was murdered. And when Rachel starts asking questions, nobody seems to want to answer. The past and the present start to collide as Rachel uncovers startling connections between the two cases that will change the course of the trial and the lives of everyone involved. The Suicide House by Charlie Donnelly. Inside the walls of Indiana's elite Westmount Prep High School, expectations run high and rules are strictly enforced. But in the woods beyond the manicured campus and the playing fields sits an abandoned boarding house that is infamous among Westmount students as a late night hangout. Here, only one rule applies. Don't let your candle go out unless you want the man in the mirror to find you. 1 year ago, two students were killed there in a grisly slaughter. The case has since become the focus of the hit podcast, The Suicide House. Though a teacher was convicted of the murders, mysteries and questions remain. The most urgent among them is why so many students who survived that horrific night have returned to the boarding house to kill themselves. Rory, an expert in reconstructing cold cases, is working on the Suicide House podcast with Lane, recreating the night of the killings in order to find answers that have eluded the school, the town, and the police. But the more they learn about troubled students, the chilling starter culprit, and the dangerous game gone tragically wrong, the more convinced they become that something sinister is still happening. Inside Westmount Prep, the game hasn't ended. It thrives on secrecy and silence. And for its players, there may be no way to win or to survive. The Hollow Ones by Guillermo del Toro. A horrific crime that defies ordinary explanation. A rookie FBI agent in dangerous and uncharted territory. An extraordinary hero for the ages. Odessa Hardwick's life is derailed when she's forced to turn her gun on her partner, Walt Lepper, a decorated FBI agent who turns suddenly violent while apprehending a rampaging murderer. The shooting, justified by self-defense, shakes the young FBI agent to her core. Devastated, Odessa is placed on desk leave pending a full investigation. But what most troubles Odessa isn't the tragedy itself. It's the shadowy presence she thought she saw fleeing the deceased agent's body after his death. Questioning her future with the FBI and her sanity, Hardwick accepts a low-level assignment to clear out the belongings of a retired agent in a New York office. What she finds there will put her on the trail of a mysterious figure named John Silence, a man of enormous means who claims to have been alive for centuries, and who was either an unhinged lunatic or humanity's best and only defense against unspeakable evil. The Wicked Sister by Karen Dion. For a decade and a half, Rachel Cunningham has chosen to lock herself away in a psychiatric facility, tortured by gaps in her memory and the certainty that she is responsible for her parents' deaths. But when she learns new details about their murders, Rachel returns in a quest for answers to a place where she once felt safest, her family's sprawling log cabin in the remote forests of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. As Rachel begins to uncover what really happened on the day her parents were murdered, she learns, as her mother did years earlier, that home can be a place of unspeakable evil, and that the bond she shares with her sister might be the most poisonous of all. The Silent Wife by Karen Slaughter. Atlanta, Georgia, present day. A young woman is brutally attacked and left for dead. The police investigate, but the trail goes cold until a chance assignment takes FBI investigator Will Trant to the state jail and to a prisoner who says he recognizes the MO. The attack looks identical to the one he was accused of 8 years earlier. The prisoner has always insisted that he was innocent, and now he's sure he has proof. The killer is still out there. As Will digs into both crimes, it becomes clear that he must solve the original case in order to reach the truth. Yet nearly a decade has passed. Time for memories to fade, witnesses to vanish, evidence to disappear. But now he needs medical examiner Sarah Linton to help him hunt down a ruthless murderer. But when the past and present collide, everything Will values is at stake. We're All the Same in the Dark by Julia Herberlin. It's been a decade since Tremolyn Branson disappeared, leaving only a bloody handprint behind. Her pretty face still hangs like a watchful queen on the posters on the walls of the town's Baptist church, the police station, and in the high school. They all promise the same thing: we will find you. Meanwhile, her brother Wyatt lives in the old family house, cleared of wrongdoing by the police, but tried and sentenced in the court of public opinion and in a new documentary about the crime. When Wyatt finds a lost girl dumped in a field of dandelions, making silent wishes, he believes she is a sign. The town's youngest cop, Odette Tucker, believes she is a catalyst that will ignite a seething town still waiting for its own missing girl to come home. But Odette can't look away. She shares a wound that won't close with the mute, one-eyed mystery girl, and she is haunted by her own history with the missing True. Desperate to solve both cases, Odette fights to save the lost girl in the present and to dig up the shocking truth about a faithful night in the past, the night her friend disappeared, a night that inspired her to become a cop, the night that wrote them all a role in the town's dark, violent mythology. The Eighth Detective by Alec Pravisi. There are rules for murder mysteries. There must be a victim, a suspect, a detective. The rest is just shuffling the sequence. Grant McAllister, a professor of mathematics, once sat down and worked them all out, calculating the different orders and the possibilities of a mystery into 7 perfect detective stories he quietly published. But that was 30 years ago. Now Grant lives in seclusion on a remote Mediterranean island, counting the rest of his days. Until Julia Hart, a sharp, ambitious editor, knocks on his door. Julia wishes to republish his book, and together they must revisit those old stories, an author hiding from his past and an editor keen to understand it. But there are things in the stories that don't add up, inconsistencies left by Grant that a sharp-eyed editor begins to suspect are more than mistakes. They may be clues, and Julia finds herself with a mystery of her own to solve. The Second Mother by Jenny Milchman. Opportunity. Teacher needed in one-room schoolhouse on a remote island in Maine. Certification in grades K to 8, a must. Julie Weathers isn't sure if she's running away or starting over, but moving to a remote island off the coast of Maine feels right for someone with reasons to flee her old life. The sun-washed, sea-stormed speck of the land seems welcoming, the lobster plentiful, and the community close and tightly knit. She finds friends in her nearest neighbor, in Callum, a man who appears to be using the island for the same thing as she, escape. But as Julie takes on a challenge of teaching the island's children, she comes to suspect that she may have traded one place shrouded in trouble for another, and she begins to wonder if the greatest danger on Mercy Island is its lost location far out to sea or the people who live there. The Comeback by Ella Berman. Grace Turner was one movie away from Hollywood's A-list, so no one understood why, at the height of her career and on the eve of her first Golden Globe nomination, she disappeared. Now, 1 year later, Grace is back in Los Angeles and determined to reclaim her life on her own terms. So when Grace is asked to present a Lifetime Achievement Award to director Abel York, the man who controlled her every move for 8 years, she knows there's only one way she'll be free of the secret that's already taken so much from her. The Last of the Moon Girls by Barbara Davis. Lizzie Moon never wanted Moon Girl Farm. 8 years ago, she left the land that 9 generations of gifted healers had tended, determined to distance herself from the whispers about her family's strange legacy. But when her beloved grandmother Althea dies, Lizzie must return and face the tragedy still hanging over the farm's withered lavender fields, the unsolved murders of 2 young girls, and the cruel accusations that followed Althea to her grave. Lizzie wants nothing more than to sell the farm and return to a life in New York until she discovers a journal Althea left for her, a book of remembrances meant to help Lizzie embrace her own special gifts. When she reconnects with Andrew Grayson, one of the few in town who believe in Althea's innocence, she resolves to clear her grandmother's name. Our fourth genre, nonfiction. When the World Feels Like a Scary Place by Dr. Abigail Geritz, and a life-saving guide for parents. Dr. Geritz shows how to use the most basic tool at your disposal, conversation, to give children real help in dealing with worry, stress, and other negative emotions caused by problems in the world, from active shooter drills to climate change. The heart of When the World Feels Like a Scary Place is a series of conversation scripts with actual dialogue, talking points, prompts, and insightful asides that are each age appropriate and centered around different issues. Along the way are tips about staying calm in an anxious world, the way children react to stress, and how parents can read signs, and how parents can make sure that their own anxiety doesn't color the conversation. Talking and listening are essential for nurturing confident and compassionate children, and conversation will help you manage your anxieties too, offering a path of wholeness and security for everyone in the family. The Last Stargazer by Emily Laviscue. Humans from earliest civilization were spellbound by the night sky. Craning their necks each night, they used the stars to orient themselves in a large, strange world around them. Stargazing is a pursuit that continues to fascinate us. Astronomers throughout history have spent their lives answering the biggest questions in the universe. Now, award-winning astronomer Emily Laviscue shares the stories of modern-day stargazers, the people willing to adventure across high mountaintops into some of the most remote corners of the planet, all in the name of science. Beyond Your Bubble by Tanya Israel. This practical, political, neutral book offers concrete skills for holding meaningful conversations that cut across today's intense political divide, showing readers how to connect to people in their lives. Political polarization is at an all-time high, and the consequences for our political relationships are significant. Many people have friends and family members with whom they feel they can no longer communicate because of their extreme political views. In this book, psychologist Tanya Israel presents her program for helping people have meaningful, constructive conversations with those they disagree with politically. Chapters show readers how to develop and use scientifically proven skills that are the foundation of constructive conversation, including strategies for effective listening, managing emotions, and understanding someone else's perspective, as well as finding common ground, avoiding self-righteousness, and telling your own story. Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. Wilkerson explores through an immersive, deeply researched narrative the stories about real people, how America today and throughout its history has been shaped by a hidden caste system, a rigid hierarchy of human rankings. Beyond race, class, or other factors, there is a powerful caste system that influences people's lives and behavior and the nation's fate. Linking the caste systems of America, India, and Nazi Germany, Wilkerson explores 8 pillars that underlie caste systems across civilization, including divine will, bloodline, stigma, and more. Using riveting stories about people, including Martin Luther King Jr., baseball Satchel Paige, a single father and his toddler son, and many others, she shows the ways that the insidious undertow of caste is experienced every day. Finally, she points forward to ways America can move beyond the official and destructive separation of human division toward hope in our common humanity. Our last genre, biography. You Ought to Do a Story About Me by Ted Jackson. In 1990, while covering a story about homelessness for the New Orleans Times, Ted Jackson encountered a half-naked drug addict sleeping under a bridge. After snapping the photo, Jackson woke the man, pointing to the daily newspaper by his feet. The homeless stranger looked at the photojournalist in the eye and said, "You ought to do a story about me." When Ted asked why, he was stunned by the answer, "Because I played in 3 Super Bowls." That chance meeting was the start of Ted's 30-year relationship with Jackie Wallace, a former NFL star who rose to the pinnacle of fame and fortune, only to crash and lose it all. Getting to know Jackie, Ted learned the details of his life and how he spiraled into the vortex of darkness that left him addicted and living on the streets of New Orleans. Ted chronicles Jackie's life from his teenage years in New Orleans through college and then the NFL to the end of his pro career and the untimely death of his mother. Devastating events that led to him into addiction and homelessness. Throughout, Ted pays tribute to the enduring friendship he shares with this man he has come to help and also look at as an inspiration. But Ted is not naive. He speaks frankly about the risk that such a relationship poses. Can a man like Jackie recover, or is he destined to roam the streets until his end? The Fixed Stars by Molly Weisenberg. At age 36, while serving on a jury, author Molly Weisenberg found herself drawn to a female attorney she hardly knew. Married to a man for nearly a decade and a mother to a toddler, Weisenberg tried to return to her life as she knew it, but something inside her had changed irredeemably. Instead, she would discover that the trajectory of our lives is rarely as smooth or as logical as we'd like to believe. In an honest and searing prose, Weisenberg forges a new path through the murk of separation and divorce, coming out to family and friends, learning to co-parent a young child, and realizing a new vision of love. The result is a frank and moving story about letting go of rigid definitions and ideals and that no longer fit, and learning instead who we really are.